Catherine, have the inheritance procedures been completed?
Is that so? Has the money already been transferred?
Although Joan rarely visited when my husband was well, now he and his family have come. Ostentatiously, they brought their son Robert in front of me and inquired about my husband's inheritance. It was clear they were just after the money. Without any pretense, they suggested that the inheritance should be used for their grandchild. Grandparents might find their grandchildren adorable unconditionally, but to me, John and his family seemed to be just using their child to extort money. No, the procedure is complicated, and it hasn't been completed yet. On the spur of the moment, I lied. Emily smirked and offered help. John, irritated by my attitude, raised his voice. Robert, however, didn't even greet me. He was running around the living room and opening the fridge on his own to find snacks and drinks. Even though he was my grandson, I couldn't find him endearing at all. Watching this behavior and seeing the couple who were only urging for money and not reprimanding their child, I was dumbfounded. Additionally, the next day, Emily's parents came over and started lecturing me on how a family should behave. To me, they were nothing more than strangers now, but it seemed they had been blinded by the $200 million and kept making selfish arguments in front of me. I was at the end of my patience. There was a loud crash from behind. Taking that as a cue, I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. My name is Catherine. I am 66 years old this year. While I was an ordinary housewife with 2 children, my husband was a businessman who had amassed a significant fortune. As a result, after my husband's funeral, there was a fuss regarding the inheritance. They say money changes people, but I never expected my own son to act this way. I never anticipated that it would lead to such a major commotion involving even strangers. After the funeral, I called a lawyer and discussed the inheritance with my children. Ultimately, almost all of my husband's assets were transferred to me. Thanks to the will my husband had prepared, which read, "To my wife, who I put through so much," the lawyer was able to proceed smoothly. The 6 years accompanying my capricious husband, who detested facilities and loved tobacco, alcohol, and horse racing, were certainly not easy. My children had already left home at that time, so I tried my best not to bother them. Since my husband left a note stating that the inheritance should compensate for the hardships I faced, I gratefully accepted. The inheritance amounted to about $300 million. My eldest daughter, Karen, from the start, believed that I, as his wife, should receive everything. She was satisfied with the lawyer's explanation and her legal share. The problem was with my eldest son, John.
It's not fair for my sister who's single and me who has a family to receive the same amount.
Your wife doesn't have a right to the inheritance, so it's only natural.
Even so, $200 million for Mom? That's way too much. Does she even care about her own children?
John started accusing me, his mother, of being greedy and tried to increase his share. Even though the will was with the lawyer, he claimed I fabricated it. He also confronted the lawyer, saying it's strange not to distribute it equally among the biological children. He even went so far as to threaten to sue me and was reprimanded by the lawyer who was present at the time. If he was going to assert his rights so strongly, I can't help but think he should have at least shown his face occasionally. In fact, Karen used to visit from time to time, but John, citing work and child rearing, hardly ever showed his face to my husband or me. Without even helping with caregiving, I sighed at John, who now seemed blinded by the amount of the inheritance. Mom, don't worry about John, okay? Thank you, but I wonder if John is really that strapped for cash. Who knows? He seems to be going on family trips quite often, so maybe he just wants money to have fun. At Karen's words, I had a bad feeling. And that feeling came true, leading me to more futile disputes with John and his group. Sometime after the inheritance discussions, around the time when the inheritance procedures, which I had been consulting with a lawyer about, were completed, John and his wife, Emily, came to our house. While having a bad feeling, I led the two into the house, and they immediately started discussing the inheritance without much greeting. Catherine, have the inheritance procedures been completed yet?
Yes. Has the money been transferred yet?
No. The procedures are complicated and it's not done yet. Would you like us to help? After all, managing such a large amount of money like 300 million must be a lot of work, right? No, thank you. So what brings you here today?
Come on, don't be so cold. We came to show you your grandchild's face after all.
The grandchild, Robert, who they hadn't shown to us even when my husband was alive and who was now in elementary school, was with them. I had babysat Robert a few times when he was a baby, but recently they hadn't even invited me for occasions like his birthdays. Maybe I only got gifts and New Year's money through John. Grandparents might find their grandchildren unconditionally adorable, but to me, Robert looked like just another unknown child brought by John and his wife to squeeze money out of me. Aren't you happy to see your grandson after such a long time, Catherine? Well, maybe. Children are going to need more money from now on, you know. It gets expensive. Yes, you both should work hard.
What's that supposed to mean? Don't you feel like doing something for your cute grandchild?
John raised his voice, seeming irritated by my attitude. However, Robert didn't even greet me. Instead, he ran around the living room and began rummaging through the refrigerator for snacks and drinks. Neither Emily nor John scolded him. They just emphasized how energetic and cute he was. I couldn't find him cute at all. Robert, aren't you being a bit too mischievous? Parents should teach their children manners and common sense. Oh, we practice non-punitive education. It's okay. I wasn't sure what was okay about it, but it seemed they didn't realize I was scolding them. As Emily followed Robert around while he freely explored the house, I had to intervene. But when I spoke up, Robert responded by saying, "You're annoying," and slapped my leg repeatedly. Seeing their unruly grandchild and his parents, who were only concerned about money, I had reached my limit. Enough is enough. John, the lawyer has explained the inheritance matter to you, hasn't he?
But isn't 200 million a bit too much to receive? Mom, you're surprisingly greedy.
The one who's greedy is you. At your age, I don't have money to give to someone who never took care of me. Words were exchanged in anger, but I made sure to firmly convey my message. I finally kicked John and his family out of my house. If they had been closer to my husband and me on a regular basis, I might have considered leaving them an inheritance for educational funds. However, I felt nothing but anger and disbelief at John and his group's attempts to simply push their self-serving arguments. Even after such a heated exchange, the next day, for some reason, John and his team, including Emily's parents, showed up at our house. Even when I checked their business through the intercom, they just kept clamoring to be let in. Thinking that it would cause a disturbance in the neighborhood, I reluctantly let them in. For some reason, Emily's parents began lecturing me.
We are families with adorable grandchildren. We have to help each other out.
That's right. You've just lost your husband. You must be feeling lonely. The couple seemed to talk a lot about family and helping each other. John and Emily just nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, their lively grandson was still running around the living room. I warned Robert not to run around. Shut up! Not only did Robert shout back, but all four of them turned on me for trying to restrain a child's behavior. One day, our son or grandson might help us out. Isn't that what normal families would think? I intend to prepare everything myself so that I don't burden my children.
It's sad talk like that which gets you cut off from seeing your grandchild. Aren't you ashamed to think only of yourself?
Our daughter gave birth to that grandchild. Your husband was Robert's grandfather. He would have wanted to contribute financially. Despite all their talk of helping out, it always came back to money. In the end, these two, perhaps egged on by John and the others, had come all this way just for the inheritance. When I was getting tired of hearing these two, who assumed Emily, my son's wife, would care for them in their old age and kept talking nonsense about what family is, a loud noise suddenly came from behind. Everyone turned to see the shattered pieces of a vase from the shelf and a surprised Robert. Robert probably knocked the vase over while running around. Seeing the vase, which my late husband loved, shattered into pieces, something inside me snapped.
Wow, that was quite a crash.
Robert, are you okay? Are you hurt?
Why would you place such a dangerous item where a child can reach it?
If our precious grandson gets hurt, we might have to ask for compensation. John laughed it off while Emily and her parents were frantic. I sighed heavily in frustration.
So, where's the inheritance? The paperwork is done, right?
About that.
What?
The vase that your child just broke was your father's inheritance. For a moment, John's group was silent, exchanging glances. They glanced at the broken pieces, then at my angry face, turning pale. Catherine, you're joking, right? It's no joke. As you said, the paperwork was done long ago, but in these times, having money can be dangerous. You never know who might target you, so I quickly converted it into an asset. As I said this with a hint of sarcasm, I could see everyone was puzzled. Holding back laughter, I feigned sadness, looking down and covering my mouth.
No way. This tacky vase can't be worth 200 million. Right, Mom?
Would you like me to bring out the warranty for that vase? Oh, and I'll need to file a damage report too. Wait, are you joking? It was just a child's mistake. You're right. Parents should compensate for their children's actions. How about paying around 200 million? Don't say that. After all, it's important for families to help each other out. Exactly. That's why you're helping me now, right? After all, I'm family too, especially after my husband's inheritance was ruined. The four exchanged glances, their faces clearly shaken and at a loss for words. The first to speak was John, who blurted out that it was Emily's fault for not disciplining the child. This led to Emily objecting and her parents making feeble excuses, saying things like it wasn't their responsibility to discipline their grandson. Enough! How can adults who can't even apologize talk about disciplining children? No one apologized to me. In their nonchalant attitudes, despite causing trouble, I couldn't contain myself and yelled out in anger. Robert, in a soft voice, he said, "I'm sorry." He probably apologized reflexively, because I was so visibly angry. Even seeing this, the four remained silent, looking down.
We'll discuss this another day,
someone said in a strained voice, and everyone hurriedly left. It was funny to see Robert, the main cause of all this, looking clueless as he was led away. Because of this, I was thinking of syncing up with Karen. What on earth is John thinking? People really do change when money is involved. After having a good laugh, I briefed Karen on the situation and asked her to cooperate. Occasionally, they'd call as if they had forgotten what they'd done, asking for gifts for the grandson, but whenever I reminded them about the broken vase, saying I was so saddened by the shattered vase, they'd quickly hang up. A few weeks after contacting Karen, she also received a call. As expected, John had come begging to her.
Hey sis, can you lend me some of the inheritance you got?
No. Are you still talking about that?
Please, I'm in a bit of a tight spot.
Apparently, John told Karen in a terrified manner that he needed to compensate for the 200 million base. As for what happened to the inheritance John received, it seems Emily and her parents spent it all. Karen lectured John about his greediness, but even using his child as an excuse, he tried desperately to get more. When Karen thoroughly explained that even what she received wouldn't be enough, he left, visibly dejected. Hearing this, I laughed again. It seems John and the others are now in a big dispute over who should pay. Every now and then, they would call asking to be forgiven, but as soon as I mentioned discussing through a lawyer, they'd hang up trembling. Thanks to that, I now live peaceful days with no involvement from them. By the way, the lie about the vase that grandson Robert broke being worth 200 million was a complete fabrication. The vase was just a cheap one my late husband bought because he liked it. It was displayed after John and the others left our home, so there's no way they'd know about it. If they showed even a hint of remorse and willingness to compensate, I might have told them the truth. However, after a few calls, there was complete silence. They seem to have blocked my number and I can't get through. The real inheritance is, of course, still in the bank. I had intended to use a little for my old age and leave the rest for the children, but now my mindset has changed. Karen, how about we go on a trip together on your father's money? Sounds great. Where should we go? How about a nice resort? That sounds lovely. Also, I've been thinking about discussing Dad's money with you properly. After seeing the true colors of John and the others, I decided not to give them any of my husband's precious money. I plan to not only bequeath it to Karen, but also explore better ways to use it as I continue my life.